Hey, yo, Pro Wrestling Podcast listeners, help us out and click subscribe to show your support. And while you're at it, shoot on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Pro Wrestling Podcast to show your support and become a member of the Pro Wrestling Podcast family. New to this episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast, we want to give a special shout out to a Facebook group that we are now proud to be a part of, and that is the Titans of Podcasts and Wrestling. Check us out on Facebook and become more engaged in this sport that we all love so much. Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. We have multiple things to get to this evening. We've got Raw results, we've got news and rumors floating around the world of professional wrestling. I want to get to all those topics, as well as please make sure, if you have not already, log on and cast your votes, the live fan voting for the fan poll. Our 256 tag team tournament is down to its final 4, and those votes will close tomorrow night, Wednesday evening at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you get your votes in for those matchups. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns that you want us to address in a future episode, pop into the Pro Wrestling Sound Off hotline at 267-642-1160 and give us that feedback so we can try to include as many of your thoughts as we can as we go through the various episodes that we put out each week. We want to make sure we get you guys as interactive and as integrated, as I should say, into the podcast that we do every week. You guys are what make this podcast what it is, and we want to make sure that we are giving you guys everything you're looking for in a podcast. So let's get started right away with this week's episode, which we want to focus, the start of the show, we want to look at the Raw results. There was a lot of really cool things on Raw. I actually enjoyed this week's Raw episode. And then we have some other, in my opinion, really important news to talk about. I will get to SmackDown results on tomorrow's episode only because of the time constraints I'm working with tonight. But I want to make sure we get to Raw and get to the other news and tidbits. So let's kick off. Raw started out with Roman Reigns. He was doing his promo in the ring, talking about his ambulance match. An ambulance showed up. He went and checked out the ambulance, and he gets attacked by Braun Strowman. This is something we all could have seen coming a mile away. And you're going to notice a theme in my commentary this week about Monday Night Raw. I have an issue with Raw, and the issue is this. I'm sitting there watching this show with my wife, my wife is not a huge wrestling fan, actually can't stand the sport, to be perfectly honest with you, but every now and again I'll get the opportunity to sit down with her and watch the show, and she, I think, was catching on to the fact that everything that happened, for the most part throughout the show, you could sit there, and if you're an avid wrestling fan, you could see what was happening step by step by step. There was no intrigue, no surprise. Now, that doesn't mean there wasn't great in-ring action. There's phenomenal action in some of the matches. But I'm very frustrated when you have a team of writers putting together programming for the premier wrestling show in the world, and you can't give me something that I can't predict myself. That's a little scary, just my opinion. You could see that Braun Strowman was not going to be in the ambulance all along. You knew he was going to attack Roman Reigns from behind. He ends up picking Reigns up and throwing him into the side of the ambulance or whatever. It's an okay segment, but there was so much more they could have done with this and made it less predictable. Our first actual match of the evening sees Finn Balor team with the Hardys to take on Sheamus, Cesaro, and Elias Sampson, who had just come out to cut one of those instrumental promos, and they got cut off by the Hardys music before Elias Sampson could even start singing. He talked about how he expanded his solo into a trio for the night, but we didn't have to listen to him sing, which in some way is a little bit frustrating, because actually I'm starting to get into everything he sings. It's good stuff. It's good entertainment. The end of the match sees the coup de grace from Finn Balor onto Cesaro. The baby faces pick up the win. We're going to talk a little bit more about one of the participants in that match a little later. Some interesting tidbit news for one of those guys, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. Goldust, finally tonight, he's going to unleash his new shattered video or whatever he's doing right now, and he's gonna bring everything to R-Truth. They're supposed to have their match, but before the match even gets started, R-Truth, by the way, no rapping, no fun stuff, none of the happy-go-lucky stuff that he normally does, just charges to the ring. Goldust immediately attacks. He's got a cameraman out there with him, and the match just never gets started. He beats down R-Truth pretty well, and even though there was no match, there's no winner, I'm okay with it, because this is the first time we've actually seen these two in the ring since Goldust turned on R-Truth, and it looked believable. It almost had a throwback to an old NWA feel, somebody just beats the snot out of somebody and doesn't really care about the match, and it was good stuff. So I was okay with that segment. Then we have an interview in the back where Paul Heyman is talking, and he's talking about what's going to happen when Brock arrives, and he's talking about Samoa Joe, and out of nowhere, Joe comes up and he grabs a hold of him, and he kind of pretends like he's going to put him in the coquina clutch. And then he tells him, he's saving that for Brock Lesnar, his client. Really added a little bit of desire. If you're a fan who's been dying to see Brock get physical since WrestleMania, this was really put you in the mode where you expected something really good to happen. Now, you thought that was going to happen before when they were going to unleash the beast, and then we had that big letdown because basically Brock did nothing. Now you've got him coming in after Heyman has been attacked, and again, so far nothing. He thought he'd walk out with Heyman. He wasn't even at the show yet. So I wasn't sure where this was going. The next segment of Raw was the most controversial and, for me, the most ludicrous of the evening. Miz TV, where they bring out Lonzo Ball and LeVar Ball and even the 15-year-old son. I can't even remember his name at this moment. And he's the most important one because he's the idiot who slips up on live television and spits out some racial slurs. Like, what are you doing? You're in front of millions of people around the world. You got to keep yourself in check, and you got to speak appropriately. And if you are not smart enough or you're not good enough to keep that to yourself, don't be on the show. It's a family show. People complain about it being all like kid-friendly and PG, but the reality is that's what WWE wants, the PG show. You can't have someone from the Ball family going out there and dropping slurs that could really affect the product. I don't need my kid tuning in and hearing that. So they have their segment. I actually thought LeVar Ball did a great job. He came out, he was cutting his promo. Miz was talking about them aligning with Miz, and they were like, listen, you're not on our level. You're too low for us. We need somebody bigger. It led to Miz trying to really take shots at the Ball family, Lonzo, whatever, and it leads to LeVar Ball peeling off his shirt and starting to do like these bizarre, strange, karate-like poses, which almost gave you the sense like there was something going to go down, and thankfully it didn't, and instead Dean Ambrose came out. This, of course, is going to lead to a match. The Miz, Bo Dallas, and Curtis Axel facing Dean Ambrose, Heath Slater, and Rhino. Anytime you see Slater and Rhino anymore come out, you already know that team's going to lose, which is exactly the case. The Miz's team gets the upper hand at the end of the match, and they get a roll-up from Bo Dallas on Heath Slater for the win. It's almost like a worthless segment because I'm so over this Ambrose and Miz feud. It really needed to end before it even got started on Raw. It should have ended back on SmackDown, but at least they're trying to keep Ambrose relevant, which right now is becoming a challenge, because Ambrose is not performing the way he did a year ago. He's much more lackadaisical. I don't know if it's getting married, if it's the criticism after the Brock Lesnar WrestleMania match last year, or what it is, but he's just been slowing down, and I'm not real impressed with Ambrose as of late. We get the in-ring segment I think a lot of people were waiting for, Enzo calling out Big Cass. He offers to have this real, reconciliation moment. He tells him he's going to forgive everything. They're brothers. Look him in the eye. I could see this is real and all this other nonsense. Cass reconciles with him. Now, I will be honest. You knew coming into this that Cass was not going to be receptive to reconciling with Enzo. You don't have an angle like that and then instantly go back. But they really did it well. This was a throwback to the Rockers breaking up, because they get back together, they're hugging, one of those long, firm embraces, they're talking to each other during the hug, they walk up the aisle, they're running around doing their shittick and their soft promo and everything. They go all the way up the aisle, and when they get to the top of the ramp, kind of like they did at NXT TakeOver, this had a real similarity to the Tommaso Ciampa versus Johnny Gargano thing. This is where Cass turns on Enzo, clotheslines him, picks him up, throws him out like a lawn dart. I like this segment, but again, when you get to a point where you could see things coming, it's too predictable, it's not mysterious, it's not spontaneous. And those are the kinds of things that wrestling fans truly like the most. Spontaneity, they like the excitement, and there was none of that in this because it was obvious. You have Kurt Hawkins out there. He's going to get obliterated by Seth Rollins. He's another guy. He came back to the company, came back with so much build-up to this new character he was going to be, and he is lower than a jobber, because at least jobbers get a few shots in every now and again. This guy is worthless, and that's a sin because he's actually a talented wrestler. But WWE, just for whatever reason, they need a few lackeys or whatever. They keep just they bury the snot out of him. So Rollins goes over big on Hawkins. Of course, there's a Bray Wyatt promo that interrupts everything. That was funny about that is you've got Bray Wyatt talking about the Kingslayer being eliminated by the Eater of Worlds and all this nonsense. And there's just, Bray Wyatt has this artistic way of speaking during his promos, and I appreciate his promos. Don't get me wrong, I'm actually a huge fan, but he it's almost confusing sometimes. Like, he goes to this dark place that a lot of people just don't keep up with. And after the show, there was like one of these conversational pieces with Rollins who said he didn't understand most of what was going on in the Bray Wyatt promo, but that he's more than happy to face him at Great Balls of Fire. We have our big segment, the one that we've been waiting for. Paul Heyman's in the ring. He's running down Samoa Joe about how, he took the cheap shot. He knew that everybody was going to jump on him the other week, pull him apart. When everybody was on top of Lesnar, that's when he went in for his strike and whatever. Basically calling Joe a wuss, talking about him being scared and weak. He actually referenced that Joe's not afraid of anybody, but then talked about how, he took the cheap shot or whatever. He brings out Brock Lesnar. Brock is at the top of the entranceway, and as he gets there, Samoa Joe comes out of nowhere, and he attacks him from behind. This only furthers Paul Heyman's claim that Samoa Joe's not man enough to stand toe-to-toe with Brock Lesnar. He keeps doing this cheap stuff. But it adds great intrigue to their match. And the interesting thing for me here is, again, I'm watching this with my wife. I said, you watch, here comes Samoa Joe out of the back. And here he came. He grabs Brock Lesnar, puts him into Coquina Clutch. Lesnar, I said, here he goes. He's going to back him into the Titantron. And here he goes, backs him into the wall. And it goes back and forth a few times before Lesnar goes down to one knee, then down onto his hip. And as that happens, a whole bunch of wrestlers come out, and starting with the Revival, which I was kind of surprised they sent the Revival out at all. These wrestlers come out, they pull Lesnar and Joe apart, and it's set up really well heading into the pay-per-view. So I'm actually really excited about Great Balls of Fire just to see this match. I don't really care about most of the rest of the card, but that match should be fantastic. We have a match with Lince Dorado versus Neville. It's a worthless match, as you can tell just by the people who are involved in the match. Neville's going to absolutely obliterate Dorado, but Akira Tozawa is at ringside during the match. At the end, Neville lays the belt down and challenges him to come into the ring. Now, here's what's weird for me. Tozawa gets in the ring, he's unbuttoned his cuffs and his shirt and takes off his tie and takes off his suit coat, and it looks like he's thinking about going to war. And then Titus O'Neil's music plays, and as he comes out to the top of the ramp, Tozawa and Neville are standing side by side like they're best friends. Like, Tozawa had like this puffed up, like, muscle look to him, and Neville just stood there while Titus is talking about what Tozawa is going to do to Neville at the pay-per-view. Which, what I find so strange about this is if somebody's standing side by side with me and somebody else is running down how this guy's going to beat my tail, you would think Neville, if he's the least bit tough guy, would turn around and lay out Tozawa. Instead, they just stood there. They could have been like, they literally could have put their elbows on each other's shoulders and stood there like they were best chums, because Titus O'Neil was the focus of the segment. And, he's talking about, whether Neville's going to be able to overcome the power of Tozawa. And, I'm cool with that tagline. I'm actually really cool with this Titus brand stuff. But I hate to say this, I love Neville as a performer, but I'm getting bored with him being Cruiserweight champion. I actually don't feel like he should be a Cruiserweight at all. Move him up to the main roster and put him in the Intercontinental or the United States division in one of the shows. But I'm not the booker. There is a backstage segment where Heyman, calls out Joe for being... he really brings it home about how he had to attack from behind. And the surprising part to me was he actually mentioned that if he locks in the Coquina Clutch, there may be a new United States champion, but that if Brock hits the F5, that the medical trainers are going to be talking about that's what happens when you go to Suplex City or something of that nature. So Heyman, three different speaking segments. That's a little much for me. I like when they stick to more in-ring action. The final match of the night, throughout the night, and I don't talk about each time they do this, so you understand, but they were having this women's gauntlet to determine a number one contender to face Alexa Bliss at the pay-per-view. So the first one out is Bayley. The second one out is Nia Jax. They have a back and forth for a few moments. Ends up seeing Nia Jax hit the Samoan drop to eliminate Bayley. The next one out is Mickie James. Mickie James gets almost no offense in on Nia Jax, and when she starts to, Nia Jax ends up catching her and eliminating Mickie James. Dana Brooke almost wasn't even worth queuing up her music for her to come to the ring. She got to the ring, she got picked up, she got slammed, she got leg dropped, she got pinned. Dana Brooke, I don't know what they're doing with her character. Emma came out next. Emma got in the ring, got a few offensive moves in before she too gets taken out by a Samoan drop and gets eliminated. And the last competitor out is Sasha Banks. At this point, right before the match started, Nia Jax had been in the back talking to Alexa Bliss, telling her how she'll see her at the pay-per-view, and I actually believed it. Now, rumor coming out today is that the Nia Jax versus Alexa Bliss feud is scheduled for SummerSlam. That being said, Sasha Banks picks up the tap-out victory on Nia Jax to win the gauntlet. She will go on at Great Balls of Fire to take on Alexa Bliss. I'm fine with the match. I think it should be a very good match. The cool part here was Alexa Bliss coming out at the end of the match and holding the championship up, and Sasha Banks drop-kicking her and knocking her down. It was a cool moment. It was cool to see the ladies end Raw, too. You know, we keep hearing about this women's revolution, but it's the times when they get the main event are so few and far between. It's nice to see a decent showing for the women. I was actually surprised. I felt like there was more show to come because they haven't given the women the spotlight in quite a few weeks, and I was happy to see them do that this time. So, overall, if I'm giving Raw like a rating on a 1 to 10 scale, this was like maybe a 6. As far as entertainment value. As far as in-ring action, I'd go up to like a 7.5. I actually thought this was pretty good. I want to get to other news on today's docket because, you know, there's a lot going on in the professional wrestling world. And I know I'm one of those people. I can get off on a tangent real easy, but first off, Seth Rollins had an interview up today I saw on eWrestlingNews.com talking about how he would love to see a Shield versus the Club feud. Now, my only issue with that is that Seth Rollins, Dean Ambrose, and Roman Reigns getting back together is phenomenal. They've all been world champion. They're all top flight talents. Putting them together makes them seem unstoppable. When you flip the script and you look at the club, now I don't know which version you look at. Are you talking about AJ Styles, Gallows, and Anderson? Or are you talking about Finn Balor, Gallows, and Anderson? I would be more inclined to think Finn Balor, Gallows, and Anderson because AJ's on the other brand. So let's go with that. Finn Balor, yeah, you can make the argument he's on a world championship caliber, but Gallows and Anderson have been fodder for months. So how you could try to convince people that's a legitimate feud, having 3 premium stars against 1 premium star and 2 lackeys, I don't see. But if Seth Rollins says he'd like to have that happen at some point, I'm on board with Seth Rollins. I just hope that before they do something like that, they build the characters of Gallows and Anderson up to a level where they can be seen as a legitimate threat to the Shield. In some SmackDown news, the main event for their Battleground pay-per-view has been determined. Randy Orton will get one more match against Jinder Mahal, and they'll be bringing back the Punjabi prison match, which is a god-awful, horrific pay-per-view concept they used way back when Great Khali first came to WWE, and he was supposed to challenge The Undertaker, but he got sick or whatever. He couldn't wrestle, so the Big Show took his place, and the match was god-awful. And then they did it the next year. It was Khali going against Batista, which, again, was horrific and awful. So maybe third time's a charm. Maybe, Jinder Mahal and Randy Orton could put on a good Punjabi prison match, and if it happens, I'm afraid they'll bring it back more and more. But that should be the blow-off of their feud, because you got to have time to build Jinder Mahal into something else for SummerSlam. There is Tyson Kidd news today. Tyson Kidd apparently will be offered a backstage role with World Wrestling Entertainment. I don't know if that means he's going to be a road agent or a producer or what he's going to do. They have a lot of those already. I can't imagine how many they want to have on staff, but it looks like they are going to finally integrate him back into the product in some way, which I love because his career has ended way too soon. He took a muscle buster from Samoa Joe at NXT in Joe's first match in the company, and it ended his career. His neck is that bad. He will not be coming back. It's a miracle that he lived through the incident. That they've said that his neck muscles were so strong, it's all that kept him alive. So, very, very good news to hear that Tyson Kidd's going to get back into the wrestling business in some variation. The big news today, the one that I really want to talk about the most, is Kazuchika Okada and Kenny Omega 3 has officially been announced. So, both men have been, for those who don't know how the G1 Climax works, there's all the talents are put into 2 groups, and those 2 groups face off in round-robin tournaments, which means every person in each group faces each other. Well, Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada have been placed in the same group. They are scheduled, they're both in Block B. They will take their match, their one-on-one match that is in the round robin section, will take place at Sumo Hall on August 12th. It's the last night of the G1 Climax round robin round. So they'll meet there. I'm expecting that one to go by way of Kenny Omega, which, knowing that this is happening, I kind of get the feeling that if you have Omega win here, he never defeated Okada for the championship, and then the winner of the G1 Climax gets a shot at the championship. Can you just see the poetic justice if at the New Japan debut in North America, Okada loses the New Japan Championship, the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, to Cody, and then Omega wins the G1 and Omega has to take on Cody at Wrestle Kingdom? Can you even imagine how amazing that would be? So they're also, Block A has a great match that'll conclude on their finishing night when you're going to see Hiroshi Tanahashi take on Tetsuya Naito. Those two matches are probably the biggest matches in the G1 round robin tournament. Don't get me wrong, there's many others. There's Kota Ibushi taking on Naito, Tanahashi against Zack Sabre Jr., Sanada is going to take on Evil, who is a buddy of his. Yoshihashi versus Naito. Kota Ibushi versus Zack Sabre Jr. That one is at the top of my list. If you're a person who loves the cruiserweights and that kind of action, Ibushi versus Sabre Jr. should be all out of this world. Minoru Suzuki is going to take on Sanada. Kenny Omega versus Tama Tonga. I'm trying to look for the big matches. I have the whole list here. Kota Ibushi versus Tomohiro Ishii. Kazuchika Okada versus Sanada. The comedy act, Toru Yano taking on Kenny Omega. I actually think that holds the promise of something really funny to see, because Yano, he really is a full-on comedy act. His finishing move is hitting like a low blow on people and then getting a win somehow. Toji Makabe versus Kota Ibushi. Michael Elgin will be there taking on Kenny Omega. So there are matches top to bottom that are just phenomenal. Satoshi Kojima versus Kenny Omega. Yuji Nagata versus Tomohiro Ishii. Nagata still getting it done at 40 some odd years old. So there's so many matches to look forward to. The G1 Climax really is probably the best wrestling you'll see all year long, no matter what company you look at. And the headline of Okada versus Omega 3 is really something people should be excited to see. It's going to be phenomenal. The other tidbits of news, Bobby Lashley teased last week that he invited President Trump to be in his corner at Slammiversary. That is not going to happen. Instead, King Mo will be in his corner from Bellator. That news was broken by the Wrestling Observer, and to be honest with you, I could see them pulling a thing here where King Mo turns on Bobby Lashley, leading to a fight for Bellator or a match in Impact Wrestling. Either one I'd be interested in seeing. King Mo, not a natural wrestler by any means, but I think he could pull it off with a match with Bobby Lashley, who's very talented and can really carry him through a great professional wrestling match. I said earlier we talk about one of the members in that six-man tag match from Raw, Sheamus. It is being rumored right now via ringsidenews.com that Sheamus is going to be written off television soon to go film a movie called Buddy Games. So they're going to, in some time, he has 6 weeks worth of filming in August leading into September, where they suspect that he'll be written off television so he can go do his movie and then come back in time to promote and get back into the ring and all that kind of stuff. I do want to throw out a Paige and Alberto Del Rio update. There was conversation on the last episode and all through the weekend that Paige and Del Rio had split up. They have both refuted that claim online repeatedly now. It looks like the two of them are still a couple. However, you got to know there's got to be some trouble in paradise. That story didn't get started out of nowhere. So where there's smoke, there's fire. Hopefully those two either figure it out or split up completely. And I just going to throw this out there. Somebody offered the thought, what if Paige and Del Rio's argument was about the fact that Paige would want to return to WWE because she gets paid really good money on her WWE contract? I would love to see her back in a WWE ring. She's one of the best, female talents WWE has. I would love to see her and Charlotte go at it, or her and Becky Lynch, or any of them like that. Actually, her and Becky Lynch would be in a really interesting matchup. Her with the whole gothic look, and Becky Lynch with the bleach red hair and all that nonsense. And one last tidbit on this episode, July 29th, 2017, at a SmackDown house show, Brock Lesnar, yeah, I said that, SmackDown house show, Universal Champion Brock Lesnar will defend his championship against Mr. Money in the Bank, Baron Corbin. That match, I don't know why they're booking that, but I love it. That's a match I didn't think I would see for a few years until somebody switched brands, but I'm okay with it. This should be awesome. It should be high power, all sorts of just heavy hitting. I hope this doesn't turn out to be like when Brock Lesnar faced Kevin Owens at a house show, where he came out and just pretty much decimated him with suplexes, F5 to him and won. I would like to see Baron Corbin get some shots in on Lesnar. I think the two of them have the opportunity to really do some special things. Just an FYI, don't forget the sound offline, 267-642-1160. If you have a topic that you want me to discuss, questions you want me to go over, anything that you'd like to hear from the Fro Wrestling Podcast, I would love to make sure I bring whatever you're looking for to you in one of these episodes. Shoot your comments there. It is a talk-to-text service. So you speak your questions, they put them in the text form, send them right to me. I can look at them and get back to you as soon as possible. Don't forget our Patreon page, patreon.com/Fro Wrestling Podcast. Become a member of the Fro Wrestling Podcast family by becoming a contributor. And if you get to our $50 a month contributor level, we'll be more than happy to put you on live with us on Going Live at 9:05 Saturday nights, 9:05 Eastern Standard Time, and let you co-host with me. That's all the time we have for this episode. Check back with us next time where we'll run down all the SmackDown results, news and rumors of the day. Special thanks as always out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for all of our music and sound effects in today's show. Today's podcast was sponsored in part by Beazle Games. Bringing a new friend to family game night is easy with Sketchy People. Showcase your artistic side in this new game from Beazle Games by going to frolifeplanning.com/Fro Podcast and clicking on the link on the right-hand side to grab your copy of Sketchy People today. And to AlleyRepair.com. Contact Alley Repair today for servicing of all of your classic skee-ball, pinball, and arcade games. Be sure to shoot over to our website at frolifeplanning.com for all of your higher education needs. If you're looking to get into a college, a university, or just that next career, Fro Life Educational Planning is for today, for tomorrow, and for life with Fro Life. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you for taking a few moments with us today. If you're looking for more wrestling news and rumors, go to www.thesportsjunkies101.com for the latest articles on the world of professional wrestling. Until next episode, take care and have a great night, everybody.